From cop to owner of a weed company. I became a school teacher and I worked for the Los Angeles Unified. I realized we were not making any money, so that they cut my pay 11%. You need to buy some houses, Kyle. I knew how much a vacancy per day was costing me. If 5 were rented, I was break even. I did a lot of the work myself. What if you got bigger buildings? Would you get an economy of scale? You'll have never have gotten an email that says, I'm out of the office, contact so-and-so.
Yeah.
That's just not how you can really roll in this business.
Can you explain to me how all of this then transitions to you being the #1 grower of marijuana in the world? Kyle, welcome to the podcast. I've been very much looking forward to this because not only have we been communicating for 8 years or something like that, but your story is so fascinating to me. From cop to owner of a weed company or a marijuana company to one of the largest property management companies in the West Coast and specifically California. You have a ton of apartments that you own as well with partnerships and all this stuff. You're really like an autodidact when it comes to everything real estate. So can you just walk me back and like tell me how this happened?
Wow. So number one, thank you for having me on. I will tell you, when I was young, the group of brokers that I was working with, the young guys, were now like shark's teeth. We've sort of moved. So to see you and see you move into the breach as we get older, you're one of the young guns out here. So
I appreciate that.
Sincerely appreciate our conversations and always appreciate your insights in the market. You're an expert, clearly. I'm not even going to talk about age and all that, but let's just say after college, I graduated in 1990 and I had the delusion, I'm not sure, of being a professional basketball player. 3 of my teammates in college went to the NBA. My shooting partner won 2 slam dunk contests. So I was so close.
You felt it.
I was close to greatness.
Yeah.
And then I would get to go. One of my best friends got drafted by the Lakers. So I was so happy for them, but I needed to figure something out. And so I became a school teacher. And because they'd pay me an extra $50 a day, I decided I'll take hazard pay and I'll go to South Central Los Angeles. And I worked for the Los Angeles Unified School District as a special ed teacher. And my girlfriend, now wife, is an occupational therapist. So we're out there just young people beginning our careers. I realized we were not making any money. California was in a recession and people, a lot of times there's an emotional feeling of, there was, at the time, white flight in the early 90s to Oregon and Washington, and people were riding off LA. Different problems than today, but significant problems. A lot of unemployment, cuts in defense, things like that. And so much so that they cut my pay 11% as a school teacher, not making much money. So you realize how much money you're not making when you lose 11% of it. And that wasn't just me. It wasn't like Kyle. It was the entire LA Unified School District. And I was like, my dad had bought some real estate on the side and I didn't know much about it. And I just, I said, I'm going to go take a seminar. There's foreclosures everywhere. You have to go to a time, when the cycle is down, and it happens, we're in a cyclical business. And I went to a woman named Cleo Katz and her seminar, and it was all about UDs and things like that. And I'm one of those people that will do the investigation and feel like at some point, no analysis paralysis, like nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, if you're going to get in, at some point, once you've educated yourself, if you think this risk is for you, go for it. I didn't know anything about property management. I didn't know anything about much of anything. I mean, I just sort of dove in, bought a house, got my buddies, we fixed it up. It was the gritty story.
Let me pause there real quick because this is a lot of my audience is young. You were on a teacher's salary and you bought a house in Southern California.
I did. Now what you're going to do is go, well, wait a minute. The house cost X, but I would tell you my pay was Y, which was also, commensurate. So
that was a risk at the time for you? Did it feel like a risk? Or you're like, okay, I can cover my mortgage payments? Because I feel like right now, this is a completely separate topic, but it's relevant, I think, in today's market. if I want to go buy a house where I want to live, it's $1 million, $1.2 million. You got to have $250,000 plus your payment's going to be 10 grand a month, 11 grand a month. That seems crazy. But back in the day, it was more achievable.
In a down cycle,
Yeah.
things become more affordable because you have more sellers than buyers. And that's that dynamic. When things get hot,
Yeah.
then they can get stupid.
Yeah.
What I would tell you that I think is vital, the reason I was able to save up money is, one, I chose the right partner. You know, my girlfriend
Yeah.
back then, now wife. So that was one of my best acquisitions. I don't want to sound
Well, you're choosing for life, right? You know?
and it was a mutual acquisition. So
Yeah.
anybody like, what the hell does that mean? But we didn't go on trips.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do stupid stuff like I would call my younger brother and say, "Hey, where are mom and dad eating?" "Oh, they're at the usual Italian place in Torrance." And I would just take take Diane, and we would just like show up. My parents like, "Hey, come on over." Well, now I'm eating for free.
Yep.
And then I'm working a teacher day school in South Central and night school in San Pedro. I was teaching ESL to adults. And so we were just trying to grind out and save every penny.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what are your priorities? Are you trying to build wealth? To me, it was, I don't want to live on a teacher's retirement. I just know that's not going to get it done. But the one story that I love to tell, and I tell it to NYU grad students, I teach one class a year to second-year MBAs. What really got me when I'm out there in South Central, think the Rodney King riots, was just really blighted. It was tough. It's a different, again, situation, but equally as bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this woman named Mrs. Beach. Mrs. Beach, and you may have to look this up and Google it, but she would drive a 450 SL Mercedes into the hood. She was an older black lady that had taught. She was one of the best teachers I've ever met. And she just had an air of confidence and positivity. Juxtaposed with, holy crap, Jordan Downs housing projects is a block away.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's gotten burned out. And politicians are simply just doing placation. So one day I go, "Hey, Mrs. Beach, how are you so positive? What pill do you take?" She's like, "Kyle, come into my classroom." So I walk on in, and I sit down, a little third grade seat. So I'm just like sitting, like one of her students. I'm like, telling Mrs. Beach, "What is it?" She goes, "My husband was a postman. He just retired. This is my last year, then I'm going to retire. We own 10 houses around inner city LA. They're all paid off. Our 2 kids, they're through college. They're done, no debt. We're going to travel the rest of our lives. You need to buy some houses, Kyle." And I was like, that's how I got into houses. Because then I was like, okay, how do I do it? Well, I didn't really think Mrs. Beach wanted to take me around with her. They were already getting ready to get on the cruises and all the other stuff. But that really inspired me, where I was like, this woman working in South Central LA, her husband was a postman, my wife's an occupational therapist, and they're set up to go live the rest of their lives. And she wasn't that old of a woman. She'd done her 30 years. And so I was so impressed. And there was my retirement, it was all about, she'd invested in real estate. And I think that opportunity exists today.
Yeah.
And so, so I got into houses. I'll just say one more is, so now I've got, when you say, could I afford it? At one point, I owned 3 houses. One I lived in, one I rented, and I foreclosed in Redondo Beach. So I was upgrading. And my wife said, "Okay, so we have to say goodbye to our tenant." Yeah, I go, "We have to sell that one. We're going to move to Redondo and then upgrade our rental from Lomita to Torrance." And she's like, "Can we afford to do this?" I go, "As long as we get it all done in 3 months." That's how much money we have, because at one point, I'm going to have 3 houses, mortgage payments, PITI, principal, interest, tax, insurance. 3 months. That's all we got. And so I didn't digest a meal properly, probably for 90 days. But again, when you have nothing, you sort of had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
By then I have a little something, so I want my chip in the game, and we were able to work it out. But, I would just tell you, fear is a good motivator.
Yeah. Yeah. You get things done when the pressure creates the diamonds, right? So that's incredible. Okay. And now walk me through, you have these houses, you're being a teacher. How does the transition to be a cop happen?
So that's a good question. So after 4 years as a special ed teacher, when you're in the middle of a very distressed situation, meaning the economy's down, people weren't dying to go work in South Central Los Angeles. And so um, I became the behavior specialist at the school. And what our principal would say is, hey, man, we're getting these Teach for America kids. And they don't really know. All they know is they're going to a bad area, but they don't know. He's like, would you do me a favor? Would you like get them all in a room and like wake them up? I'm like, yeah. So I was that guy. So you'd have like, I'm like, where'd you go to school? I went to Davidson College in North Carolina. I'm like, okay. And so you have these true believer, young, like, we're going to save the world. And I'm like, hey, and I don't want to take any excitement away because that's, when you don't really know how to teach, the excitement sort of bridges it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I would just say, hey, listen, we don't do back to school nights. We do back to school days. Hey, this is what try not to wear red or blue. Try, also orange and brown and purple for Grape Street. So be careful of that. This is the way in, this is the way out. And so I just sort of gave them the, hey, let's try not to get killed.
Yeah.
But so, I missed being part of a team. I really liked being a basketball player through college and always just enjoyed like the off the court moments. I enjoyed that. And so I looked and I realized they paid police officers almost double what they paid teachers at the time. And I could also be closer to home because at that time now I'm living in Redondo Beach. And so I put an application in and I kind of felt I'm not the right guy. I don't follow rules that easily. And it just turned out that, Torrance PD hired me. They did a list of 780 or something like that. Civil service, background, all that. And I ended up top of their list. And so they hired me, started paying me. I left teaching in June and I started the academy in July.
Wow. Jeez. Okay, so you transitioned to being a cop, and you do that for how many years? And I assume at the same time, you have these houses already. So are you continuing to buy real estate, or what is the transition from? What does that accumulation of these properties look like with the cop salary? Because I know a few cops who own quite a few buildings. So it seems like it's a good path to be able to create the wealth there. What did that transition look like?
So, just right around the time I was leaving teaching, and getting into law enforcement, um, I went to watch a USC football game with one of my buddies, and his dad had gone to SC and been a teacher, and he got heavy into apartments, and so he started just asking me questions about my little house portfolio, and I was super happy and learning so much. Um, and he was like, "Why don't you buy apartments?" And I'm like, "Why would I buy an apartment?" It's like, "Well, your cost per door and cap rate and things I didn't really know much about." I mean, when I tell you I was super green, I mean, I was super green. You don't know what you don't know yet. And so at the end of the day, I was like, okay. And then I bought a 7-unit building from the RTC, again, really distressed times. And then we were forced to buy the next door building because it was in foreclosure and it was so bad. But to give you a feel of how bad it was, I called the broker and they write an offer for me. And I was like, nah. And they're like, well, they're not really coming down. Nobody else would write an offer. Like 2 weeks later, they're calling me, "Are you sure you don't wanna do this?" Like, nobody was writing offers on some of the stuff, and I realized that a lot of this was kinda criminals things, meaning you'd have a drug house, and, you know, I'm against the war on drugs, but it's very hard for just normal people to live in a house that just has folks that are addicted to methamphetamine coming and going at all hours.
Yeah.
It's a hard situation, and so one of the skills I have is I think I'm a pretty affable guy. I can talk to people. And then once I got to law enforcement, they were very generous with training. So the best gang training is in Los Angeles County. We are the gang capital of the world.
Hmm.
And so you can learn a lot about gangs and the history and how to read tag and all that. And then also when it comes to drugs, CHP puts on courses on being drug recognition evaluator. So I availed myself to that training and really and truly, what I would tell you in repositioning these assets, yes, it can absolutely be financially rewarding, because you're basically taking an asset that's valued here, and through hard work, um, you can, and hopefully being, smart about how you spend your money on these buildings, you can completely reposition it. And then the typical way that people have made a fortune in this business is, after you turn it around, you refinance the property, or you sell it and do a 1031 exchange. So there's different ways to basically take that new equity and buy more. So I love the idea. I got into C properties, C, A, B, and C. A might be Newport Beach. B might be, you know, Torrance.
Yeah.
C might be Compton.
So you were buying that 7 unit. What market was that
San
in?
Pedro.
That was in
And
Pedro.
it was San Pedro, down by the harbor, and it was bad.
Yeah.
It was just really bad.
Yeah.
And the cops, I'd see an LAPD guy. I'm like, "What are you seeing in this neighborhood?" And they would just give me all kinds of, like, how bad it is, and all that. So again, um,
That's so interesting, because I'm seeing like this story be written, and basically the way that I'm thinking about it, it's like the schooling that when you were a teacher, right? You had to be able to talk and teach and tell stories, because storytelling is so much important of how people learn. So you got this skill set of being able to tell these stories. Then the cop aspect of it, you learn how to deal with tough situations, which then behooves you when you're trying to go and reposition these assets that are in tough situations. So it's like you can tell stories, which means you can resonate with the residents there. You understand the drugs and the war and the gangs and all that stuff. And so you can recognize and understand what they care about and their ins and outs and their psychology. And like this combination of these two skills really can propel you to turn an asset that someone else has no idea or doesn't even want to handle, and you can feel confident with your skill set to be able to do that. So you were taking on these rough projects because those skill sets allowed you to do that, when other people were saying, hell no.
well, you asked me a good question. A lot of young people, and like shark's teeth, there's going to a new generation behind you, and someday you'll
Yeah.
be me.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Yeah.
and so you hear people say, "I want to build wealth." You are not going to build wealth 8 to 5. That just not going to happen. You're going to have to go and find a way to generate it yourself. And so for me, I had to have a job to pay my bills. So how do you get wealthy? Okay, so I worked graveyard as a police officer, and then, I would bake in maybe 5 hours of sleep somewhere, but then I'd be talking to, the John Walsh or some of the guys way back in the day. And then I'm out there looking at properties, and I'm trying to manage my properties. And so, what I would tell anybody that's thinking about becoming wealthy is, one, make your priority. Is your priority to go travel? Is your priority to go, get bottle service at a club? Is your priority to show out? Do you want to have a real fancy car? I had a Honda for 15 years, from when I was 16 years old. And I got made fun of by a lot of the police. Those guys like big trucks and boats and stuff, those toys. Those are depreciating assets.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on how you look at the world. Now, if you want to go play, you certainly deserve, and you may say, "Hey, that's what I want to do," but don't get like, if, the world's not fair.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
Mm-mm.
And then you say, okay, you know, if I buy an A property, I'm going to pay more. My return on capital will be less, at least out of the gate. If you find one that needs fixing up and you find an opportunity to raise rents and all that, yeah, you can make something great. For me, I just looked at it as the highest rate of return would be the tougher properties, because less people really want to do it, and they're always valued at a better cash on cash return.
Mm.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do happily own some really nice properties,
Yeah.
but I didn't then.
And it was you stepped your way up, right? You start and you grow, and like that's the natural progression of any business, really, because these properties are a business, which transitions me into then. I knew of you as someone who owns Beachfront Property Management, which is this massive property management company. How many units do you guys manage now?
About 13,000 in
13,000,
Orange County.
which is a lot. That's a lot of properties. Can you explain to me how Beachfront, or when Beachfront started, and what that transition, like you were managing your own buildings and then you said, I do this better than other people. Let me start a management business?
Actually, no. I appreciate that question. You know, Taylor, 96 is when I became partners with my partner. He was doing hedge funds and stuff. And that's when between 96 and the very beginning of 99, we acquired 250 units. Average building's 40 to 50 units, probably. A little some bigger, some
Mm-hmm.
smaller.
Were you syndicating these?
Yeah.
Okay.
He taught me how to syndicate.
Okay.
Again, he came to me and the story of my life has always been, fuck it, let's give it a shot. Nothing ventured, nothing gained would be more
Yes.
of a, but he
I like
said,
fuck it.
yeah. Well, because he came to me and he said, listen, how do what's your cash on cash return? I didn't calculate things like a fund manager. But I knew what everything cost. I knew how much a vacancy per day was costing me. I understood the basic math. And I think when I had 14 units, if 5 were rented, I was break even. And I did a lot of the work myself, my wife, and I'm not really good with my hands. My
Mhm.
wife's actually better than I am at that. And so he came to me and he was saying, what if you got bigger buildings? Would you get an economy of scale? I'm like, I think so. That's logical. And so he said, why don't we just do something together? And if he said, how did Beachfront Properties, that name, he likes his name on his stuff and so, things like that. I said, in 1993, I wanted to buy a beachfront foreclosed house. It was $1 million. I could afford 300K. And I said, so I'm willing to work extra hard. I would like someday to own a beachfront property. So I'm going to put that in the name so I never forget why when I'm dragging myself out of bed and I'm not getting sleep and I'm pushing a police car around, this is why I'm doing it. And that's where beachfront property.
Wow.
So we had 250 units. I couldn't, and we were using a property management company. And I said, if I just charge what they're charging, it'll get me to about, when I hire a few people, it'll get me to about 66% of my police salary. And I said, let's go. I'm just going to go manage our stuff. I didn't want to manage for anybody.
Uh-huh.
It was not the goal. I just felt like at this point, my focus was much more towards my passion, which I really liked the real estate business. And, I appreciate the men and women out there that are answering 911 calls and risking their lives for strangers. I also became completely anti-drug war. I was heavy in it, speaking out about that. I'm not in favor of what we see in San Francisco and downtown LA. I think that's ridiculous, but I think we should be legalizing and regulating and, but not letting people drink out in public and do their needles out in public. I think we have to find a happy medium that we can all just, treat everything more like alcohol. But
Mm-hmm.
I won't go down that road anymore. But what I would say is, um, almost immediately, my gritty nature, I took a storeroom at a 51 unit building we had in Lomita, and I turned it in for less than 10 grand into a studio apartment. Again, dollar adjusted, it'd be more than that today. And I hired like a receptionist and an accountant to work with me. So there's 3 of us in this little room, and that was the corporate the worldwide headquarters of Beachfront Property Management. And so we're sitting in this apartment building, and I hired somebody to manage one of my buildings out in Anaheim. And one of the guys who was young like you, was buying fourplexes everywhere, and he liked her. So he asked for a meeting with me. He's a young guy, he's killing it. And I'm like, okay, what can I do for you? He's like, I want you to manage my stuff. And I'm like, no. As just like when my partner, like, you want to do no. So except for Mrs. Beach, where I said yes.
Uh-huh.
And the bottom line is, I said, I think I need a broker's license for that. And I don't even know if I want a broker's license. He's like, look, I see what you're doing. Nicole likes you. She says you're a smart guy. You're a cop. Kind of cool. And I go, so you just want me to manage your stuff, and I've never managed any. He's like, yeah. And I go, well, how do I do without a broker's license? Like, use mine. So he literally like just,
No
I'm like,
way.
I'm like, what do you want? Like, so I think it took me 3 months back then.
Yeah.
I just took a quick 1-day class and
Got the license.
got my license, passed the test. And he and I are still friends to this day.
Wow.
Like, we're now not the young guy. He's
Yeah.
got a massive portfolio. He still loves the fourplexes. He has some bigger stuff, but
Yeah.
he just is addicted to fourplexes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that was really good. And the thing is, from January 99 to today, so we're in 2025, there's not been one day, and I mean one day, Saturday, Sunday included, that I haven't responded in some way to a client. And I'm talking about in Iceland, where I'm with a bunch of real estate guys and we're camping out in the middle of Iceland. And I literally, on my BlackBerry at the time, I couldn't get a signal. So I had to walk up a hill. We're all in our yurts after a 26-mile hike of the day. And also I'm like, okay, it's like bink, bink, bink. And then I go down to my little yurt and they're like, you're fucking crazy. You're an idiot. I'm like, you know what? You don't have clients.
Yeah.
Things don't get better. And
Yep.
so I'm like answering all my emails and I walk back up. Now it's like nighttime and I'm like watching all the emails go. So it's just one of those things where if you're going to take on people's trust, you you know, brokerage is a different kind of trust.
Yeah.
And it's more transactional. So you have to continue just go, go, go. Property management is an annuity business. It's a long-term, as long as a person theoretically owns their property, if you keep them happy. And the big deal is they trust you. And a lot of our clients live on this income. So, they're letting you manage their business and their livelihood. So it's really important that you respond. And so
Yeah.
all my clients have my cell phone number, and you'll have never have gotten an email that says, I'm out of the office, contact so-and-so.
Yeah.
That's just not how you can really roll in this business.
It's interesting when you look at the successful people who've grown, like these substantial businesses, these businesses that can stand on their own. And you technically, if you wanted to, right, you could probably hire a CEO or hire someone, and you could take a step back if you wanted to. But there's the threads of you in this company that I think that founder led spirit, when that goes, it's very hard to keep that together, right? And you've been able to grow and get this to 13,000 units like that. It's almost like if you weren't involved in the company, it wouldn't be Beachfront. It'd be something else. And I think that's what you've taken on with a lot of your businesses. And you seem like the type of person who really puts yourself, like you said, 100%, fuck it. Like, I'm going to go in and figure it out, which explains a lot of the success you've had, which I also want to transition to this glass house, your company. Can you explain to me how all this then transitions to you being the number one grower of marijuana in California? Is that fair?
The world.
The world. You're the number one grower of marijuana in the world. Can you please explain to me how that happened?
So, nice of what, I appreciate what you said. Everybody has a few talents. Happily for me, I'm pretty good at connecting with people and trying to get to the bottom of what is it that is going to make you happy. And if there's times where I'm talking to somebody who says, I need to get out of property management, and I talk to them, I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you will not be happy. You've been doing this for 50 years. We're not a match.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I understand you're tired, you're having some issues. If you actually want to get out of management, you talk to me. But I've been doing this too long. And so the same as, you know, what I'm pretty good at is finding the same when people I want to work with as my teammates, and, um, and finding out what is it that you're looking for. And as the companies have grown, I found, man, the level of talent that I can afford really makes my life easier, so that I have really good teammates. And then
Mm-hmm.
this goes back to my basketball days. You give me some good rebounders, you give me a couple of good shooters, you give me guys that are willing to lock down and play defense, and that when I need help because someone beats me off the dribble, they're going to step up and they know I'm going to cut down and you know, so being part of that team really is key. And I grew up as a point guard since I'm height challenged. So I got to lead that way. So when it came down to running businesses, I think it's really important that whether you're buying an apartment building, a house that you want to rent, it always comes down to watching your pennies. being smart with your investment. Don't let vanity get in the way. Don't let ego get in the way. What is the goal? And so if you are actually the point guard of a small organization and you have other people that are depending on you on that check cashing every 2 weeks, you've taken a responsibility and a commitment to that person that they have said, "I'm gonna choose to work with you as my teammate." And to me, it's like one of the proudest things is every single company, when I opened the doors in January of '99, I had a couple of team members with me, and we have never had a payroll check bounce. And that first year, there were 2 times that I couldn't take a payroll check so we can meet payroll. Because at the end of the day, you build trust. Build trust with your teammates, you build trust with your clients. And and then if you watch your pennies in the business so that you're smart and you don't, and I say smart, I guess that's relative. When you're focused and on the prize, don't spend money that's not gonna help get you there. I'm not always saying be penny wise, pound foolish, but don't too often. If I walk into, I'm looking at buying something, right now, another business, and I went to the person's office or manufacturing facility, and it wasn't fancy, and the guy was embarrassed. I'm like, "This is what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
If I come in here, it's gold plated, I'm out."
Mhm.
Like, you're not focused.
Yeah.
You're thinking of the wrong thing. You're thinking of your ego, and I've gotta be this and that. I mean, I think if you come to our offices, they're nice offices, but they're not fancy.
Yeah.
They're comfortable for the
Mhm.
team. So, so Glass House, people have been kind enough, my investors, they've followed me outside of a bike ride from my house when that's what I first started, to an hour drive, to an hour flight, to Asia, to Europe, and happily we've gotten good results because the fundamentals that you learn really help you, but then you have to realize if I'm gonna leave Calabasas or I'm gonna leave, I have to know local and everything is,
Mhm.
so you have to really get down in the weeds. And then, we bought some distressed pecan farms down in Georgia, and investors, we syndicated in a day. And the letter was like, "I don't know anything about pecans or farming," but this was a farm that turned into a home development site that went bust in the Great Recession. We can land bank it because they didn't take out the pecan farm. Someday, they probably wanna do this, but you can own a pecan farm. We have a management company. They know what they're doing. We've done our due diligence, and my partner and I are gonna lead. We're gonna put the most money in. Do you want in? Yep. So all of a sudden, I'm like, "Okay, God, these folks are willing to follow us,"
Yeah,
and
the trust.
and so then, Cannabis, because I was speaking out against the war on drugs, in 2011, we had Prop 19, and I became one of the leading voices for Prop 19 in Southern California. And I mean, I can send you some photos and stuff,
Mhm.
but, uh, I I was the former law enforcement officer because current law enforcement was trying to scare everybody that you can't legalize marijuana, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, anybody that grew up in California knows that marijuana is much more benign than alcohol. You
Mhm.
just know it." And
Yeah.
also, every police officer out there, almost everyone had to admit, "Yeah, I've smoked pot."
Mhm.
If they didn't I wouldn't have been a cop if they didn't accept that. They'd have no cops.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is I just looked at it as, "This is stupid." By then, I'm anti-war on drugs, and there's enough, stuff out there on CNN, Fox, all that, where I was speaking out against it, that then people were calling me that they were in the then illicit market, and they're like, "Hey, you raise money. We saw you on. We know you're." They trusted me by what I was saying, and I was like, "The cops hate me." Like, there was a period where the police did not like me, and they looked at me as a Benedict Arnold. Like, "How dare you go on Fox? How dare you go on CNN and say the drug war is wrong?" Because, look, anytime something's new,
Yeah.
you always get bloody. The first going through the wall gets bloody.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, and I called the chief at the time, and I said, "Look, this is my stance." My wife was like, "I completely agree. I knew how frustrated you got on the war on drugs towards the end of your career." And the chief was like, "Look, good guys, like, do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah.
It's all good. I still like you. I still respect you. I may disagree." "Oh, good." And long story short, went to Colorado when it passed. Prop 19 failed. Went to Colorado in 2014 when it rolled out the legal market, and I just wanted to understand, what does the legal marijuana market look like? They had Washington, Colorado had been they went. We were 1996 on Prop 215, which was medicinal. So we had some
Mm-hmm.
framework. And the bottom line is I couldn't make it work in Colorado because they had residency requirements, and I like Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, guys, let's come back. We know Southern California, we know real estate. We saw what's happening there in Colorado and the imbalances with rent and everything else. And so we used our real estate skills, and we used the way that we run the way I run tight companies. So think about for a second, Taylor, today you call me up and say, hey, I got a 15-unit building. It's very distressed. Let's put something together. We have some investors. Let's do it. Let's put a budget together. And we'll probably put a 10%, um, you know,
Buffer.
yeah. But the bottom line is we can't go back and ask for money
Yeah.
later. If
Yeah.
you do, that's a huge fail.
Yeah.
You better have a good reason that's outside of your own incompetency. And so that's the world I was living in, whether it was in Europe, whether it was in China. Like, I raise the amount of money I need, and I live within those means, and I execute to plan. And the team, whoever I'm working with, whether it's in China, whether we're in Germany, we all get on board that same. We all look at the vision, we all agree to it, and then we go. Cannabis, a lot of folks that got into this looked at this as the green rush, and I just couldn't get my head around what some of the companies were doing. And then like MedMen went public, and they were worth $2 billion at one point. But and nothing against Adam and the folks that founded the company. They went after it. But when I looked at the rent they were paying, and I looked at the margins that were selling a plant, and I'm like, this is now a legalized business. So the margin that you would get for risking prison is now gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that margin that you got to pay the government. So your government is a partner. And if you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas,
Mm-hmm.
fuck you, pay me.
Yeah.
That's the government's take.
Yeah.
So, so I would get investors calling me because we started with 150,000 square foot greenhouse in Carpinteria. I walked that. I thought it was the biggest thing I've ever seen. When it was, I'm like, and they had been growing cut flowers. And I'm like, how are we going to sell? If we fill this up with marijuana, how are we going to sell it? And also, how do we make it legal here? And so the grit from real estate, the ability to budget, and
Mhm.
then finding good, smart people
Mm.
that saw the same vision and said, let's work together. Let's be teammates here. And so we basically went from that in one store to that was 150,000 square feet. We then bought a 355,000 square footer, which I then was
Holy
walking.
crap.
And that's what people would say. Most of my investors are my same real estate,
Yeah.
and they'd walk in like, "What the hell? There's 6 big greenhouses here," and I'm like, "Right?" I go, "I don't." They're
Yeah.
like, "Can you sell it all?" I'm like, "I think so." And then ultimately, just up the road from here, we bought a 5.5 million square foot greenhouse facility, second largest greenhouse facility in America. And um, we didn't know, like, we saw it in October of 2018. At that point, we're still bringing online the 355. So between the two first ones, it was 500,000 square feet. This is 11x
Holy
those two.
crap.
And that was exactly my response. And my wife was like, because they were growing tomatoes and cucumbers. And
Yeah.
the guy who built it out, this cool, gritty entrepreneur guy,
Yeah.
with like a intermediate school education. I mean, dude's
Insane.
like you don't need to be Harvard MBA to be successful in this world.
No.
And he wanted, like, I don't know, $250 million. I'm like, I don't even know how to wrestle that in cannabis. And, so the bottom line is, we had an opportunity. I didn't realize he was actually over-levered. He basically lost it in a short sale to a large private equity company, a real estate company out of Portland. But he had struck almost like on a cocktail napkin, an option to buy it back.
Mm-hmm.
So we got together in 2021, and he's like, I can buy it back for $118 million. I'm like, all right.
Mm.
but I got to pay him.
Yeah.
But I'm going, so I go, okay, I'm going to go find a way to finance this. And so one of the things that if you say, hey, what's a good lesson? If you find a good deal, Taylor brings you a deal. There's money out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may have to turn over 20 times more stones, but people want to be part of a good deal. And if you can tell a good story, build their trust, be worthy of their trust, you can, the sky is the limit.
Mm-hmm.
You could just go.
Yeah.
So when it came to this, it was like, I had been going up to Canada they'd been inviting us up because we were big enough that we were on the radar screen. Again, MedMen was the toast, Harborside, both California companies were the toast of the belle of the ball. We were like the kid in the corner that
Yeah.
nobody wants to dance with. But they still would bring us up. Well, I developed relationships and we continued to grow and just kind of grind it out and stay focused. Don't do anything stupid. And at that point, I called him and I said, okay, I have an opportunity. I need 118 million plus. I need more than 118 million. These are the assets I have. What can we do? And they're like, well, if we take you public on an IPO, we can get you 100 million, but they have these SPACs. And I go, yeah, I've rejected so far. But they go, there is one that's running out of time. It's a 2-year window. And they have theoretically 400 million, but you might be able to keep 200 in. I'm like, okay. So before when the SPACs came, I said, fuck it. No. Or I said, no. This time I'm like, fuck it. Let's go. So I was able to work with my team and we were able to go public via a SPAC. Those are called special purpose acquisition companies.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, once you're public, you're public.
Yeah.
It's just you were birthed through in vitro
Yeah.
versus not.
Yeah.
But once you're born, you're born. And so we're on the public market. A lot of the SPACs just had dubious endings and they blew up. We were very, very calculating. And also we have team members that are really good at growing. They will forget more about growing than I'll ever know. And that was key because they could evaluate what we have and do something, sort of dream something that had never been done. But we could sort of, we could calculate how much money do we need. And at the end of the day, Taylor, my background to be able to go up to Portland and sit down with a private equity company and sit down with a farmer who doesn't have a high school education and cut deals and say, look across the table and say, okay, you know, I may negotiate hard, but it's straightforward. Once we have a deal, we have a deal. And ultimately we were able to buy that farm. The guy who had the option actually is our largest shareholder, more than me.
Wow.
I wanted it that bad.
Holy crap.
Well, and here's the thing. When I saw that farm, I said, this will bring the highest quality cannabis at the lowest costs. That means we can get it out to people because I really believe cannabis is a super value add for society.
Yeah.
Medicinally.
Yeah.
It's a really wonderful plant that we're only scratching the surface. And so to me, I thought whoever gets that farm is really going to be in a great position. And so it was worth it to me and to our investors to do that. And now, we're trading on a stock market. If we get some legalization, I think we're going to look back and say, man, I can't believe
that was a deal, man.
Yeah. But again, when does that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it feels inevitable to me. Like, truthfully, it feels inevitable. It's crazy to me that it's not like nationally legal. It genuinely kind of blows my mind when you think about it. Just, I guess, California, we're exposed to that kind of stuff. But I think you're going to look back on that deal and realize that might have been the deal of a century because it's the stepping stone for if you're already the #1 producer in the country. And then when it becomes legal, like, that's just going to be an incredible story. I hope they make a documentary, honestly, because that would be.
We have so many great teammates. Sanjay Gupta wanted to come on out and visit the farm with CNN.
Yeah.
And we asked Mama Sue, who's one of my teammates, and she's a woman in her, I don't want to say her age, but she's an older woman. She's utterly fantastic. And she talks about the medicine for older folks, people. And so to have these kind of teammates and, if someone looked up Sanjay Gupta and Mama Sue, you'd see a really cool, it's only, it's a few minutes to get in there, but it's phenomenal. And so I look at it as, like if someone goes, why would you, give up so many shares to this person? And I'm just like, the opportunity that I really see with Glass House, one, it is inevitable it'll be legalized. But if
Yeah.
you're a stock investor,
Yeah.
timing does matter. Like, when does that happen? I don't have a good answer for that.
Mhm.
So, um, I believe in it. The only selling I've ever done is for taxes when if I get a new grant, a lot of times I'll write a check because I hate to give up any shares. I believe in the long
Yeah.
term. But one of the best things about this versus any other company I've been with is many people in our company get shares. And, people became billionaires. They became Microsoft millionaires. And so if things go well at Glass
Mhm.
House, and look, anything can happen. I can't give
Yeah.
stock advice. But if it does what I believe it can do, a lot of people will significantly benefit from it, and that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Do I need to have the most shares to get that kind of gratification? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
As greedy as the next person, I think so, but I also think that, you know, um, I'm not growing the plants. I'm not doing the social media. I'm not coming up with the brands. We have such a talented group of people that my success is dependent on my teammates.
Yeah.
I never won a basketball game by myself.
So that's a great point, and I'm actually curious to know because you've grown a bunch of really big companies. What does it take to build a company that actually can last and that can stand it on its own? Like, what's the process of growing a people business? How do you become good at that?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. There's some businesses out there that I see that they don't value people. They don't mind just going through. They just see people as just a means to an end. Um, and I'm not saying that you can't run a successful business that way. Success meaning that you'll make money,
Yeah.
but it just depends on how do I define success. I like stability in my life, and so one of the great honors that Glass House got was we were voted like one of the best places for people to work. I forgot which was it, Inc. magazine or one of those. We have a plaque in our office. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. But for me, that means I can focus in on my clients. I can focus in on the business because I'm not having to replace somebody that left. You know, hopefully we're generous in the pay. More importantly, I think for people, pay is important, obviously,
Mhm.
but also, if you have your child is doing something at their school event, you don't want to miss that. And so we always do what we can to just be flexible
Mhm.
and try and be good humans. And also, at both companies, we instituted something a while ago where if this is not the right place for you, we'll pay you 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, we'll pay you 2 weeks because I want to make sure that you are happy here. If you'd be happier somewhere else, we'd rather have you go there. And so just having that policy in place, I think, is a way of saying, we want you, but if you're not here, we don't want an antagonistic relationship or where you start getting better if we don't have a good fit.
Mhm.
And look, I will tell you, we ask a lot of our team members. It's not easy. We have high standards, but I think we hire the right team that sees the vision and rallies around it together
Yeah.
and contributes. So, like I said, I'm one person, and let's say between everything, we probably have 500 people at Glass House, and we have hundreds of people that work at Beachfront as well. And so, someone's right now at one of our 10 stores. They're helping our clients,
Yeah.
and the folks up there at the farm right now are working with the plants and solving problems and things like that. And our media team is trying to get the word out and everything else. So and the accounting team dealing with the auditors and all that. So we have so many moving pieces. I guess at the end of the day, it's try and find the right people.
Mhm.
Um, the benefit to growth is you can afford, talent.
Yeah, yeah, pay for talent. That is one thing that I've seen a lot from very successful people, and I'm obsessed with studying. Like, there's this podcast that I listen to obsessively. It's called Founders,
Okay.
and basically he dissects these very well-known business people and just very successful people. And it's funny that there's this through line. They always say hire talent, overpay for talent, because it's not a 1x, 2x, 3x. It's a 10, 20, 100x when you get someone who's really, really skilled. And that is like the spark to take a company from, 0 to the next level and grow that. So it sounds like you've been able to figure that out throughout your company growth and hire really, really talented people, what is the future for you in terms of not only the real estate stuff, like what are you focusing on right now? Obviously you're growing the businesses, but you're doing some real estate stuff too. What's your thoughts on California and the regulations and policies? It's changing a ton. Every conversation I have with an owner is like, man, they're trying to lower our rent increases. They're putting regulations. I can't renovate my properties anymore because substantial renovation is not there anymore. How are you looking at the future of the portfolios of your businesses? What is that looking like for you, Kyle?
So good question. The more obstacles that come your way, the more opportunity. Now, sometimes the obstacles can be a block for a while. Um, I think, I know a lot of the politicians here in California. Truth be told, I've been a registered libertarian my whole life, but I spend more time with Democrats because they run California, and there's a supermajority in most cities as well.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the folks are well-meaning. Um, I mean, I don't think there's like an evil to it.
Mhm.
I know a lot of my friends that own properties and run businesses in California think that way. And but the problem is a lot of the folks don't have any kind of background in finance, in making a payroll or doing something like that. So at least right now in California, where we've gone pretty socialist, actually,
Mhm.
where there's a feeling that the government can do better than private enterprise. And so they'll pass laws like, let's say, ULA, which was a mansion tax. Well, it really wasn't a mansion tax. It was a tax to feed the homeless industrial complex, which I'm part of too, meaning
Mhm.
that I'm managing stuff in, you know,
Yeah.
that homeless stuff, the homeless, and tax credit housing. But I will tell you, it's like, okay, so we passed this. What happens? They didn't get the money they thought they would because sales went way down. And the difficulty is with Prop 13, it works very well for the government and for California. People were losing their homes when it came around 79. That's why it passed. But if properties don't sell, they don't reevaluate.
Yeah.
And typically in California, every 5 years properties sell. That's the average. So when you upset that apple cart, and let's just look at the city of Los Angeles, and you say, okay, what are the hindrances to the money they need for tax money to run a proper city? And we all just tiptoe around the fact that LA is a broken city. And I'll tell
Billion
you why.
dollar deficit.
Well, it's not just that, but let me just tell you why it's a broken city, because we manage in pretty much every city in LA and Orange County.
Yeah.
And LA is the worst. And I love LA. Went to USC.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my time in the city of Los Angeles. It should be the greatest city in the world, if not for the government. And where I would tell you is everything comes at a cost. If you want rent control, fine. They've had rent control since 79. You want to make it steeper? Fine, you can do that. What happens? Well, that means that your property tax, it's going to be it's going to be under what it could be. So not only does the owner lose value, but the city loses value. And because they say, "Hey, we want very low rents." Okay, you're going to get low taxes. That's hard. If I'm a city council person, I'm like, "All right, what do we need?" Well, there are streets that'll have no light bulbs, like all of Alvarado, from Langers for several blocks by Wilshire Boulevard,
Yeah.
famous Wilshire Boulevard, no lights.
Yeah.
You walk along and sidewalks are all over the place. Trip and fall hazards. If you're disabled, really tough.
Yeah.
The worst part to me is emergency services, particularly the police. People in Los Angeles, except the very nicest areas, have just realized if I call 911, nobody may come.
Mhm.
During we have a dispensary in LA. During the riots, during the George Floyd kind of a weekend riots, our our place was getting overrun in the middle of the night, and our security guards were calling 911. Nobody answered. there's just not enough. They can't get enough people. And if you go to South Central, I used to work, you better off just cutting deals with gangs. There's not enough police. And so people have just accepted the quality of life, homeless everywhere, things like that. And they don't have the money. Fire trucks.
Mhm.
Do you know there's like hundreds of fire hydrants that are missing that people have taken? I don't know if you can weld down those things.
Holy crap.
So when you actually, and I have to try and help with quality of life issues, luckily I can call the police, speak to a watch commander, and typically get a response
Mhm.
that otherwise people can't get. So when you have a building owner, it's like, Kyle, this really nice building in Koreatown, or this really nice building in the Valley, or, name the place in LA. And I'm having a real problem. There's a homeless guy who bathes in our laundry room and he's scaring people with a shank.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to go out there. And the police are like, we we can't just handle this.
Mhm.
And so it's like, oftentimes I'll have to go talk to the person, lead from the front. Um, and I'll talk to the police and say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. Can you help us with this situation? And just like, I'm not going to solve the situation for that human being. That
Mhm.
person needs serious help.
Mhm.
But for the tenants that are under our management, I can help in that way. And then in the cannabis industry, it's like the state of California and the city of LA can't get out of its own way to
Mhm.
properly regulate the business. And so we pay these very high taxes. I want to say if you go to our store, the taxes all in could be 40%. Think about that for a second. And 2/3 of the industry is still, approximated to be 2/3 illicit.
Yeah.
And the illicit, they don't have to pay workers' comp. They don't,
Yeah.
they don't have to take care of their teams. They can spray whatever they want. And so the more I've learned about, I appreciate that we sell tested product. We have product liability insurance. We run it like a normal business. And the state of California has been an abject failure in managing this industry, and that's really a sad thing. I've watched so many people get a social equity license. The promises of social equity, fine, but when I talk to some of these folks, and they're so excited to get this license for a retail store, and then they realize, but wait a minute. People that don't have a license are just selling on the street corner. They just opened up a store. How am I supposed to survive? And the sad reality is you can't. You can't. And, I'm not arguing for jail and all that, but what I am arguing for is regulation
Mhm.
or don't give people false dreams. I mean, it's almost cruel to what they're doing. And I've talked to people in the city of Los Angeles and said, you can't just virtue signal because this hurts people's lives. And I've had many people come in that got a social equity license, and I want to help them open up a store. But it's like, it doesn't make sense for them and it doesn't make sense for me. Um, so California, there's just I think folks like people in government want to feel good about themselves and make virtuous decisions, but they don't think about the unintended consequences.
Mhm.
And for the voter out there, I think the voter should ask, if you live in the city of LA, what is it that you want as a citizen of this city? And as a business owner, do you want to invest in this city knowing you're going to have to deal with it? The prices of real estate in the city of LA have gone down,
Mhm.
and including my holdings. And I can't argue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I would tell you, again, that sounded pretty negative. There's a great book called The Obstacle is the Way. And some of your biggest opportunities are dealing with the most difficult situations. If you can do that, you're going to come out really strong.
Mhm.
And I will say this about Glass House. If I look at all the states that have some sort of legalized cannabis, and it's by far the majority, just a handful that doesn't have that, either medicinal or recreational or both. By far the hardest. The biggest is California. The biggest cannabis market in the world is California. Um, the state, the cities, they just can't get out of their own way to properly handle this.
Mhm.
But if you can win here through that, and then we get to compete with states where they don't have to deal with all the craziness. My team that I work with every day, they're phenomenal. And the same thing with property management. Property managing in South Carolina, I mean, I've managed in Florida, I managed in Washington, I've managed in Wyoming, Colorado. There is nothing like the city of LA.
Yeah.
You know, when I hear people complaining, I'm like, you have no idea. You know, gang problem in Southern Georgia.
Yeah.
I don't think you really totally understand.
Yeah.
So, but I would say again, it's good for my business that it's gotten so complex.
Yeah.
Inglewood does it this way, and LA does it this way, and Culver City does it this way, and you have to serve this notice and this with the security deposit. And if you don't do it right, you don't post this notice. So to be an expert on that has actually been good for my business.
Mm.
If I could get rid of it all tomorrow, I would,
Yeah.
because most of it's just nonsensical.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the fact that the police are just overburdened. They don't want to make arrests. They don't want the liability. They don't want to be caught on camera using force, meaning they just would rather not use force. They'd
Yeah.
rather not be there. That has provided a really interesting opportunity where, you know, most management companies, if you think about it, you know, a lot of our friends, do they really want to go out to Compton and sit down with gang members? No.
No.
Gang members are business people
Yeah.
and humans like we are, and they have their wants and needs. But they'll also look at you, and if they think you're scared, it's not good for you.
Yeah.
And so if you can just sit down and work things through, that is an advantage that I think we have at Beachfront. But it's, you know, look, it's never been harder to manage properties than it is today.
Yeah.
But I'm still seriously optimistic, and I would tell everybody that watches to learn from you and to, you know, find that first property, if it's a fourplex or a threeplex, and then just build it up.
Yeah. And keep it going.
100%.
Kyle, this is incredible. I love this. We could probably talk for hours about stories. There's so many stories we didn't even get into on our prep call. We talked about your experiences with these properties, but I know we're wrapping up. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate this, Kyle, and we'll have to do round 2 soon.
Taylor, thank you. Really appreciate it. And hey, man, just keep chugging and doing all the great stuff you're doing.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.